Yeah, I think so. Anyway, today's Sunday, NFL playoffs, church, a lot of good things today. So whatever it is that will be doing, certainly hope you have a great day. It's still early. My son had a sleepover last night, so everyone's pretty tuckered out. I think they put me to bed pretty good, but I'm an early riser. Got up and got the bacon ready, and the dog's taken care of, and I sat down, and I want to talk today about something um, that I think is pretty. It's a pretty good message, I think. And sports is going to be the backdrop, but it's not a sports story per se. So I know there's a lot of people that follow me that aren't sports fans, and they can talk about it a lot, but don't get tuned out. It's just the messenger in terms of the message I wanted to send today. But it's funny again how sometimes a little thought runs through and turns into so many different things. So I was up this morning and put the TV on, and something popped up on the TV. I'm a sports guy watching ESPN, and there's something called NFL Films. And NFL Films, many, many years ago, was created, and these guys are a company that sits on the sidelines and takes film and video and essentially documents game after game, player after player. They mic the players with some of the most amazing insight in the world. And as a kid, I used to just be addicted to these shows, and that's kind of where this thought process started. And I wondered if NFL Films, what they do, if we had that in every facet of life. In other words, I know you have C-SPAN and politics, but you don't see the inside, things like that. You don't see in the business world. You don't see these things, and I wonder how differently the world would look at things if we had if we granted access the way the NFL is granted access to this company, NFL Films. It's just brilliant stuff that they do. But what it got me thinking about was a few things. One is, as I'm sitting there in a quiet house, I put the fireplace on. I started to reminisce about how, as a kid, as I said, I used to just love when these things came on. And it gave you a history and insight to players and games and people that I never would have known of. They were way before my generation in a lot of cases. And I thought, I wish my son was out here watching this stuff with me. I used to be addicted to sports and the newspaper and reading box scores and calculating, average yards per game and batting averages and in a way, I'm kind of bummed that, my son and daughter, don't do that. But not bummed as much as I am aware that they have so many more options these days. When my mom and dad were growing up, they had 5 channels to choose from. I had 30 channels to choose from in print media. Nowadays, these kids have 300 channels to choose from and 17 different kinds of video games and instant access to everything in the world with a press of a button. So, maybe it's not anybody's fault that they're not in that regard. But so the morning started with me kind of thinking in that regard, as to, man, I wish, I was reminiscent to my childhood and how much I love these shows and my how almost sad it is, I think, that my kids and other people haven't experienced it the way I did. And that's probably just a selfish thought on my part. But then the story started, and there were little things and some big things. And they were doing there was a show called NFL's Greatest Games, and they were doing a replay or highlights of the 2012 Super Bowl, which took place between the Ravens and the 49ers. Now, one of the more miraculous things about that particular Super Bowl is the head coaches for both teams were actually brothers. So when you talk about that for a moment, there's only 32 people in the entire world that are NFL head coaches at any one moment. And here, 2 of them come from the same family. So that was pretty neat. And again, these guys are mic'd up. Well, not, but the mics pick up while they talk. So they had a moment before the game where the 2 brothers, just like a lot of coaches do, go over and say hello to each other. And I thought it was really neat because they talked for a few moments, and Jim and John Harbaugh. John coaches the Ravens. Jim Harbaugh coaches the University of Michigan right now, but back then it was the 49ers. And, these are kind of rough, macho football guys. And they talked for a few moments, wish each other well, and Jim started to walk away, and John said, "Hey, come here." I love you, man. I love you, and give him a hug. And even in that moment, it was nice to see that perspective takes over. That they're competitors in the moment. They're opposing sidelines, but they're brothers. And at the end of the day, win or lose, they're going home and being brothers. And to see their families going to see each other at Thanksgiving, and it was just nice to see that it wasn't macho, uh, you know, football guys, but in that moment they were brothers, and that was really sweet to see. And then the message that I want to share with you guys and my kids, I thought was really really poignant, and you kind of got to be a big football fan to remember some of these little things, but I remember things pretty vividly. Well, the Ravens went on to play in a Super Bowl against the Niners and a young quarterback named Colin Kaepernick, which I'll talk about in a moment. But the two things that, as I watched this program, I started to remember was if you ask a sports fan right now in the year 2018, who won the Super Bowl between the Ravens and the Niners, probably a lot of fans would remember that it was the Ravens that won. But most, including Ravens fans, might not remember all the little things that got up to allowing them to win. Some of them, I won't say miracles, but borderline crazy in the sense that unlikely. And that got me thinking about life, not football, but life. Last night I ran into some old friends, Ron and Linda, been married many years, great people, supported me on the journey, been nothing but wonderful. And I haven't been fortunate to be married for many years like they have. But I've run across folks on the journey, I've run across people in everyday life, whatever it might be, it doesn't have to be marriage, but so many of us easily remember the hallmarks, the birthdays, the anniversaries, the wedding day, the graduation day, the day you bought the first car, whatever that benchmark is that we remember. But what I realized today was that it's kind of a shame that we forget all of the little things that build up or happen to make that happen. Now, as an example, in the NFL these days, just making the playoffs, sometimes the difference between one play. It's one game, you're in, you're out. Earlier in the season, the Ravens were playing San Diego, and they had a 4th and 29. Now, if any of you know sports, I could almost assure you that, much like myself, who's been watching it for over 45 years now, can tell you that I've absolutely seen no other 4th and 29 or longer ever converted. To those of you that don't know sports, just take it for what I just said. In 45 years, first of all, the opportunity doesn't come up that often that you have a 4th and 29. But then to be able to convert that is absolutely insane. So back in November, when it looked like they were going to lose this game, the Ravens converted in the fourth quarter a 4th and 29. They gained 30 yards. And they did it not by some miracle play. They did it with a little check down, a little pass that went about 3 yards. And this player, Ray Rice, ran, and one of his teammates made a huge block, and he got 30 yards, got the first down by a yard. They kicked the field goal to tie the game, went on to win in overtime, and that kept their streak going. Then, in the game before the Super Bowl, they were playing the Denver Broncos in a game, frankly, they shouldn't have won. Late in the game, almost in a last-ditch effort, quarterback Joe Flacco went back, threw up this huge long pass that Denver knew was coming. The defender was right there in position. He just mistimed his jump. All they had to do was jump up and knock the ball away. Game over. Denver goes to the Super Bowl. Well, he jumped up, mistimed it, missed the ball. The Ravens player ends up catching the ball. They go on, kick a field goal, win the game. And without either of those two really, really long shot plays happening, the Ravens aren't even in a position to win the Super Bowl. They're not even in a position to play in the Super Bowl. And again, that's kind of how I kind of look at life, is my biggest joy is being a dad to my kids. And it's easy to say I'm a dad. It's easy to remember the highlights, the day they were born, the taking them to school, but it's the little things. It's the breakfast. It's the teaching moments. it's so much more. You know, the journey has turned Jamie and I around. It's great to be able to look back and say, hey, things are good. You know, she's found the peace, and as a result, we're doing really well. But it's those little things. It's those 4th and 29s that you overcome. The long path endeavor to get you there. You know, sure, it's great to be married for 40 years, but in a way, and it's just human nature that we forget, you know, those little everyday things that allowed someone to be married for 40 years, that allowed somebody to get that dream job, you know, that allowed them to put their nose to the grindstone. I can remember, and I've talked about it on my journey, I have a friend of mine who I've kind of reconnected with through this journey, and Glenn was like a younger brother to me, and he was going to college, and he was struggling, and he came to me and said, man, I'm thinking about, you know, dropping out, and asked me for my advice, and I gave it to him. You know, it was just advice. I had nothing to do with it, but, you know, if you look back now, as a dad to his own kids, he's doing well, you know, financially, I guess, or not just financially, professionally is what I meant to say. He's doing well. He's a leader. He's a role model. You know, and his kids might see him as, look at my dad who has all this stuff together and has done this, you know. But I wonder if they knew about that moment when he was calling me and saying, can I come over and talk to you? And he had that critical moment that could have changed everything. You know, had he not found it in his heart and character to push through and get that college degree, would have been even considered for the job that he has and the position he has. But he chose to take that little step. So sure, it's great to look back and say I've been with my company 25 years and I'm a regional director and things like that, but it all comes back to a moment when he was a 19, 20-year-old kid and had this crossroads. That was his 4th and 29, you know. His brother Wayne, who growing up was one of my best friends, I also use as an example with my kids. You know, Wayne went to college and became an accountant and was doing well for himself as a young man, 22, 23 years old, making mid-50s, living at home. You know, he could have just been spending money and living large, but he realized his 4th and 29, he realized that he didn't want to be an accountant. You know, he wanted something else. So, you know, he made the choice to walk away from that and go pursue something else, which now he's an attorney and he enjoys it, and he's got his own practice, and you know, that's his life now. And it's easy for him and his family and people to sit there and say, hey, you know, look at Wayne, he's a successful, you know, tax attorney, right? But how many people know about that 4th and 29 moment when he was driving home one day and said, you know, just really not happy being in the accounting field. I mean, it's great, but it's not what I want to do. How many people have the courage and the strength to recognize that and go do something about it? So that's kind of my message to you guys today is take a breath and look back at your life, as young or old as you are, and ask yourselves about all those 4th and 29s. Ask yourselves about all those little things. You know, whether it was joining the military or asking her to the dance or changing a career or leaving an abusive situation. Good, you know, whatever those 4th and 29s are, and celebrate those. It's great to celebrate 20 years of employment with a company and 15 years of marriage and all of those, and those are the watermarks. But think about all those 4th and 29s that got you to that position. I think we get lost forgetting that. The other thing I want to talk about real quick, I'm running out of time here, was, you know, in this football game, Colin Kaepernick was a young man and just a football player. He's gone on to become something of a pariah, a martyr, fighting for what he's passionate about. And, you know, at the end of the day, I don't agree with his methods, but I do agree and support that he believes in something. And I have so much respect for anybody that believes in something. He's essentially sacrificed his career for something he believes in. I think he went about it poorly, and that's the last message I got to leave you with. You know, he was a Super Bowl quarterback. Imagine if on a platform the day I said an interview, he had said, you know what, guys, I don't want to talk about football right now. I want to talk about what I feel is injustice in our society. And so they talk about it. That to me would have been so much more profound than taking a knee and letting other people talk for you. I'm running out of time. I love you guys. Have a great Sunday. 4th and